for a quick Devar Torah. We're entering Parshat Shlach. We're entering the Parsha of what is usually referred to as the spies. If you look in the Parsha, you notice something. The word spy doesn't come up. They're never referred to as spies. The Hebrew word for a spy is a meragel. They're called tayarim, which is Hebrew for tourist. Okay, they were appointed to scope out the land, that's true, to see it, but not to make any judgments on it. You know, and a spy sometimes does have to make judgments. What's the intent of the people, etc., make these things. Their job was simply to look at the land and to report back. And they come back with this horrible report. They made themselves into spies and gave a very bad report, speaking a lot of lashon hara about the land. And it's interesting, this comes right after the episode of Miriam and the lashon hara that she spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu. Now remember, lashon hara is true, okay? It's not a lie. That Miriam was complaining about that Moshe seemed to be ignoring his wife. Okay, he was on a very high level. And she was saying, what a beautiful wife you have. Why are you ignoring her? You know, why is he ignoring her when she complained to Aaron? And that's basically what lashon hara is. It is something that's true, but said in a very negative way. These guys came back from the land of Israel, from Eretz Canaan, and they said, it's a great country, but, and that but is what got them into trouble. Okay? Because they began to say, we can't conquer the land, it's this and that. You know, one of the hardest jobs is to try to analyze information coming in on that level. So when these guys began doing it, that was not their job. Later, and the Haftorah for this week, by the way, is when Joshua sent the real spies into Jericho to find out about the land. Now, there's a lot of differences I'm going to go into during the week between the nature of these guys who went, and we know their names, we know what tribe they were with, they were leaders, but suffice it to say, they came back with this bad report. And that bad report is what got everything into trouble. That the people moaned of this whole thing. They cried on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av. And according to the Midrash, God said, oh, you cried today for nothing? In the future, I'll give you something to cry about. You know, and that's how we get the 9th of Av as a day of mourning. So the basic fact is, again, this week's Parsha, I'm going to get more into it during the week, is an object lesson about lashon hara, how bad it can get, and giving the wrong information, or taking that you're giving information and then giving it an analysis which is blatantly wrong. And basically, Joshua and Caleb were the only two who did not agree with the basic report, and they were honored because of that. Okay, again, get into more why they of all. But it's just that we have to be careful what we say and how we interpret events around us. I was just listening that, just to give you an example, there's a fellow who comes and prays here, Glenn Richter, who was one of the co-founders of the Student Struggle for Soviet Jewry. I don't know how many of you know about it. It started in the early 60s when he was told, he and I think it was Rabbi Berman, not the Rabbi Berman on the west side, it was a different Rabbi Berman, were told, don't make demonstrations, we'll make things worse. It didn't worked out that way, as we know. And Glenn, I'm glad to say, is one of the heroes of the 20th century because he started a movement that helped free a lot of Jews from the Soviet Union. but it's something that we have to think about, that don't listen to the supposed experts, who self-appointed experts. Use, put your faith in God. Something to think about.